One of the best parts of being a Photopass photographer was working with the characters. While there are a lot of similarities with them, there were also differences between each character, and particularly with the differences between face and fur characters. So I don't repeat myself from other videos. A lot of your questions I've actually addressed in other videos, and so I want to point you to those before I jump into this one. So if you want to know about meeting characters, check out the FAQ about meeting characters. Look for the ones about rules that Photopass photographers had to follow, as well as learning to work with characters and the pass system that we use. Also, if you're new to my videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so that you get the notifications, because for some reason YouTube's goofed that up recently and people aren't getting notified, so make sure you do that and hit that like button as well. Working with characters was a blast. Easily one of my favorite parts of the job. As a photographer, my job was to capture those special moments and memories that people have with the characters, and to help make sure that they were the best moments that they could have. If there were ways that I was able to assist the interaction and the character and make it even better, I would do that. But most of the time, I kind of stayed in the background of it. Every character or group of characters had an attendant with them to be able to help them out in case there were any problems or issues or anything that they needed assistance with. And depending upon what they were doing, those attendants may get busy doing other things like taking care of the line or something like that. And so as photographers, we were there to help out if needed be. So that meant with any character, our duties may at any point include not just getting the pictures, but we may help them out with autograph books and holding them and helping them hold it and getting a pen for them to sign with. It may mean holding the guest cameras and getting pictures with those, in which case I always tried to make sure I got the best pictures possible. I know there was this idea sometimes that Photopass photographers would deliberately take rotten pictures with the guest camera. I never did because I wanted them to know that if I took a good picture with their camera, I was taking an even better one with mine. It also may mean just helping things like make the run line smoothly. It may mean helping make sure that somebody who's in the line doesn't run ahead and into the middle of the guests that are with the character at that moment, and because kids would do that sometimes, and just help them keep things going smoothly. Our role would also change a little bit depending upon if we were working with a fur or a face character. A face character could actually talk. They had a normal face like us, whereas a fur character was usually cartoon characters like Mickey, Minnie, Pluto, Goofy, ones who didn't normally talk during an interaction. And depending upon who it was and what they were doing, we may or may not do a little bit more to get involved and help make that interaction better. For example, face characters, just by the simple fact that they could talk, could handle a lot more things by themselves so that we didn't have to. A face character could ask for autograph books, they could tell guests to stand in certain places, they could give them directions about what to do, they could ask for a pen if they didn't have one, although they usually did. Because they were able to speak, people understood what they were saying and what they were asking. If a guest walked up and didn't know what to say, a face character could easily ask him another question and start a conversation. A face character could see something that the guest was wearing and point out to it, but they could also comment on it, on how much they liked that and how cool that was, and the guest would understand that as long as they understood English. Now, of course, those who didn't understand English, that was a whole nother story sometimes. And so with face characters, we really took a background role where we just kind of stayed in the background and took our pictures and tried to make sure that we got the best shots that we could. We pretty much let the characters run the role. Now, occasionally you would get a guest that would walk up to the character and not say much and freeze up, and even if the character was prodding, they still wouldn't respond. For things like that, I would actually try to listen to my guests that were in line behind me, because when they're not with the character, people talk. My hearing is generally pretty decent, and so I could overhear the conversations. And so I would try to listen for things that may be of interest to the characters. So if the guest did get up there and freeze, I can kind of maybe mention it and prod it and help create an interaction if they weren't responding to the character. Sometimes people get with somebody famous and go, ugh. So for example, if a guest was getting ready to meet Mulan and I had heard in the background that they like martial arts and had been talking about karate, then when they got up to Mulan, if they froze, I could mention, hey Mulan, I heard them mention something about learning karate. And then Mulan's got an opportunity to say, oh, well, I know Kung Fu, and they could compare and contrast and go from there. Other things that I would do, too, is I would try to help enhance the interaction by responding to what was going on. A good example there I've mentioned in other videos is Vidya, who is a wind or air fairy, one of Tinkerbell's friends. Well, one of the things that Vidya likes to do is she likes to blow a big gust of air. I would make sure that I was kind of lined up if I was working with her, so I would get hit by the gust of air and get knocked off my feet and roll over. It would help enhance the whole interaction and make it just more real and better. It made it a lot more fun. So things like that I could do to help, I would. But at the same time, I didn't want to insert myself into it and make myself part of it. Fur characters, though, I would do a lot more interacting to be able to help them. Because they weren't able to talk out loud, they would have to rely on gestures and sign language, and hopefully people would understand that. But it was amazing how many people either didn't pay attention to what they were doing, or couldn't figure out what they were saying. For example, they'd walk up with a pin that the character liked. The character might poke at the pin and clap, or ask where they got it. And they go, huh? They're pointing to your pin saying they like the pin. Where'd you get it? Oh! And then they would kind of figure out. So we would work as an interpreter sometimes. Again, the attendants would also do that. But a lot of times as a photographer, the attendants were busy taking care of things, and so that's what we would do. Even simple things like directions to be able to stand for the picture. Mickey might be pointing to somebody and asking them to move over here. And they'd look just utterly dumbfounded. What? Huh? Mickey's saying, move over there. Just scoot around. Oh! And so we would have to help direct sometimes because they couldn't figure out basic instructions. It was amazing how clueless people get when they were with characters. And sometimes even with conversations. Characters would try to ask questions and they just wouldn't get it. They wouldn't understand, oh, what's that? Or that's really neat. Or I'm happy for you. Basic things like that. And so we would tell them, hey, Mickey's saying this. Pluto's saying that. Goofy really likes that. Donald doesn't like that Mickey thing right there. And we would help prod the interaction just to help make it more real. Other things that we would do too, we'd be ready with conversation starters, especially with fur characters. Because again, guests would freeze up in weird ways when they were with them. They would walk up to the character and then they would turn and look at the photographer and ask us, do they do autographs? Do they do pictures? Why don't you turn around and ask him? We would get that a lot. And so then they would turn around and go, they wouldn't talk. I'm like, it's okay. Mickey understands words. You can talk to him. He does speak. He just doesn't use out loud words when he does. And then people would kind of move a little bit. And I would say, hey, Mickey, what they're trying to say is, and then Mickey would respond because the guest had been really silly. And Mickey would talk to them. And then people would start to figure out, oh, I can actually talk to them. Pluto was a good example where people would freeze up a lot. They would walk up, and of course, Pluto's a dog, and what do you say to your dog? And so this is where little kids were great. Because Pluto would get down on all fours then, and the little kids could then pet Pluto and stroke his nose or pat him on the head a little bit if they were gentle. Pluto could start the interaction that way, and then I could talk to the adults and say, hey, why don't you try asking Pluto this? And it would just help start a conversation and make the interactions better. Again, it wasn't to put us in there, it was to help the interactions. We didn't always have to do that. In fact, didn't have to do that most of the time. But it happened often enough. The neat thing was that once most guests got that they could talk to the character and interact with them, then they didn't have a problem. It was usually just kind of that initial push and prod. And, hey, it's okay. Go ahead. And then they would go and they'd have a good time. Even down at the end of the interaction, though, when you're getting everybody posed for the big picture, it would be a little bit different. Typically, you have the attendant standing there with their camera, or maybe a family member who didn't come into the picture. And so they would be standing with their camera, and then I would be standing there with the Photopass camera. If it was a face character, they could get everybody together, tell everybody where to stand, tell them what kind of pose to take, and then the face character would tell them, okay, everybody look over at your camera, look at the Photopass camera. And so everybody would know where to look just because the character was telling them what to do. Well, with the fur characters, sometimes we would have to, again, help direct. So the character may be trying to tell them how to pose, and they're just kind of clueless. We would then say, hey, do you see how Goofy's standing? Stand with him like that. Do the same kind of thing. Notice how Donald's kind of doing this? Well, turn your back to him a little bit and do the same thing. And so we could help get them posed. And then we would direct them with the cameras. I would get a little more animated. This is one area I would stand out a bit. Because I would direct the guests and try to make sure they were looking in the right place. We want everybody to look at the same camera at the same time. I would end up doing something along the lines of, okay, everybody, look over at your camera there. Now look over here at Donald's camera. And then I would take the picture and they could see and hear where I was pointing, where I was looking. Most of the character interactions, face or fur, we got to kind of stay in the background. But again, with fur characters, we did get much more involved, and that was probably the biggest difference between them. Fur characters, we'd have to help sometimes get things started or point to the cameras. Face characters, they had that under control. So I hope you enjoyed this little look at some of the differences between fur and face characters. For the most part, they were pretty similar, but that's kind of the system that we worked under. Again, it was all about the characters, not about us. If you've got more questions about the differences, I'd love to hear them. Be sure to post them in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like button too and subscribe. Hit that bell notification if you haven't so you can actually get the notifications that YouTube's having a hard time sending out. Don't forget too, I've also got a Facebook page and a Reddit page. You'll find those links below, as well as a link to my store where you can purchase Sir Willow merchandise. Thank you too to my patrons for supporting me. You'll see their names at the end of the video. I'm so appreciative of everything that they do. And thank you for watching. Helps if I turn the microphone on. That would be a bad thing. One of the best parts of... Ginger, go away! Would you stop dancing, you goober? Reach around behind the camera and smack you. Look for my one about learning... Ginger, go sit down! You just went back for like 4 times for no reason. I know! Every character or group of characters had an attendant with them who would help take care of their needs. I know, wait until I started talking. Dimwit dog. It meant that we could help the character during the... It meant that we could help... Oh my goodness. No. I'm not talking right. I'm never okay. Okay, everybody, look over at Donald's camera. Now look here at it. That was totally wrong. Wrong camera. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right there. If you'd like to see another great video of mine, there's a good one right there for you. And if you'd like to be like these wonderful people and support me on Patreon, hit that link right there. Thanks so much.